Quinn is the super fast roaming top laner, but if you take away her bird, she's just a woman with a crossbow that can do a flip. So who's the real champion here? But I have found a master player who instead plays Quinn Support, not as a damage champion, but as a full tank. Taking tank runes, he can set up plays in lane with no risk, and a full tank build that lets him bait enemies into terrible overextended fights. As support, all of his abilities have completely new uses, as well as turn Quinn into the fastest support roamer in the game. Oh, and he also doesn't take flash, because he has a better strategy. This video is sponsored by Surfshark VPN. Surfshark is fast and easy to use on an unlimited amount of devices, including your PC, phone, or even smart TV. So if you're browsing the internet at home on your computer, Surfshark encrypts your traffic, making sure you cannot be tracked by anyone malicious, and your IP stays hidden. When you're out or traveling, you can use Surfshark on your phone to stay safe on public Wi-Fi. Or when you're at home watching Netflix on your smart TV, Surfshark can help you unlock huge libraries of new TV shows and movies on Netflix and other streaming services like BBC iPlayer. One show on BBC iPlayer you have to watch if you're not from the UK is Sherlock with Benedict Cumberbatch. Or for Netflix, one of my favourite shows, Atlanta, a comedy and pretty trippy drama created by and starring Donald Glover. It's not available on Netflix in the UK, USA, or most of Europe, but if you VPN to Brazil, you can watch all of the episodes right away. Surfshark has a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can give it a try with no commitment. Get Surfshark VPN at surfshark.deals/HappyChime, linked in the description, and enter promo code HappyChime for 83% off and 4 extra months for free. Our player today is named Flanko. Flanko started playing Quinn in Season 5, when the rework was released. Even with the updates being late in the season, Quinn was by far his most played champion, playing top lane and even some Quinn jungle, up to Diamond for the first time. By Season 8, he had actually become a Quinn jungle one-trick, climbing even higher with it. He had one cheese strategy he did every game to rank up as Quinn jungle, take his red buff and immediately gank bot lane to get first blood, snowballing through this lane to win the game. In high elo, he played against the same people all the time, so eventually he started to get recognized, which meant this strategy no longer worked. The enemy bot lane would ward and avoid it, so his playstyle broke. And it wasn't just the players countering him. On top of that, jungle kept being changed. First in Season 9, when Riot made camps worth less XP. This made the slow clearing junglers like Quinn much worse. And then again in Season 11, the new jungle items made early clear much harder. Quinn jungle was dead. Flanko couldn't even get a positive win rate, so he needed a new role. He thought of top lane, but even the meta role for Quinn didn't look very good, with a ton of losing matchups and a very high risk playstyle where one mistake in lane meant the game was over. So he thought of support, a role he had tested before, but he knew Quinn could not be a full damage support, because he didn't have any way to get resources to fund the items. He wanted to be more like a bard, low income, but still have good roam potential, be strong in lane, and be able to help his team. He started to spam Quinn Support, changing things as fast as possible, and after only a month and a half, he had climbed all the way to master tier with this new strategy. But why does Flanko play as a tank? This off meta is one of the most insane, but also one of the most well developed I have ever seen. Quinn Support sounds useless, that is, until you combine it with his custom Aftershock rune setup, special summoner spells, and change up how you use Quinn's abilities, so they work really well in bot lane, actually becoming an engage support. In lane at level 1, Flanko takes E. At level 1, Flanko plays slow, using his passive to poke enemies as well as push wave to get level 2. In hard matchups, which are the ones where enemies can poke you, Flanko takes Q instead at level 1, and uses it on the minions. This ability does AoE damage, so he can still hit enemies if they're hiding behind minions. Level 2 is his big power spike, so he gets it as fast as possible. At level 2, he now has Q and E, so he can walk up to enemies and look for a fight. Using E first to proc his Aftershock, he now becomes really tanky. He also takes bone plating, so in any short trade against an AD carry, he will not be able to lose. Flanko also takes double combat summoners, meaning he has no flash. The reason for this is to ensure Quinn can win these early fights, just from the power of the summoner spells. Tank Quinn is not a damage support. His goal is to engage for his AD carry and set up kills, baiting enemies in and turning the fight. AD carries cannot DPS when they're exhausted, and they cannot heal thanks to your ignite, cutting it by 60%. So any normal 2v2 fight is now very one-sided. Also, with this build, Quinn cannot die, thanks to her tankiness and her use of E. This ability means you're never the one who can get jumped on, you always have an escape. Think of it like Ezreal's dash on his E, but Quinn's also CCs an enemy, and makes her tanky thanks to the Aftershock. His favourite matchups are against tank supports like Nautilus or Leona. He pokes them down slowly and goes all in on them when they get low. If they run away, he can chase them and keep auto-attacking. If they engage, he can use his E to peel back attack, CC them and slow them, ensuring they're stuck in the fight until they die. His main source of damage early on is his passive, so he uses E on the target he wants to focus to guarantee the passive will appear, following up with a guaranteed Q hit while they're slowed. Quinn Q is really good bot lane because of the blind. It's crazy effective against AD carries because it means they can't auto attack to win the fight. Even this ability alone can block all of a champion's damage and win a 2 vs 2. Quinn W in lane isn't great, but it is useful for spotting the enemy jungler. Flanko can use it safely in lane to check bushes, or move out into the river to try and spot the enemy jungler to make sure they're safe in lane. Quinn Support can also move out of lane and uses early tankiness to bait enemies into a fight. He makes enemies stick around in fights for way too long, staying alive, kiting enemies into his team for free kills. But that is nothing in comparison to Quinn's level 6. At level 6, Flanko unlocks his full roaming power. You are now the fastest support in the game, and can join plays before anyone else. Quinn's main strength from top lane hasn't changed. She is still the hypermobile champion that specialises in collapsing on plays before her opponent. Flanko looks for ganks in mid lane, speeding past enemy vision to behind the enemy and comboing them with his mid laner. If he does this once, he can repeat it over and over again to destroy the lane, getting a huge lead. Flanko can even start to roam top lane. It takes him hardly any time to reach it, again going for a flank around the enemy and slowing them with his E to pick up a kill for his top laner. Even though he doesn't have the best CC or shielding like a normal support, these roams are the reason he's good as a support, because you can arrive way earlier than the enemy. Since from this point he roams so much, returning to bot lane is even a bit of a surprise. Whenever he returns to lane, he's in bird form, so he can chase the lone AD carry down. If the support is not there, the AD carry is dead. In mid game, Flanko continues running around to gank and join fights. Thanks to his ultimate, he will never miss a fight, so will always have an opportunity to impact it. Usually Quinn top cannot use E to engage a fight. She just gets popped by the damage, immediately dying before she can do anything. But Tank Quinn can start a fight with E, and stay alive long enough for his team to collapse. Flanko even buys LOCKET as his first item, using it to bait enemies in, activating it at the last second for extra survivability for him and his teammates, making him even more useful as a peel support. Quinn's W gets much better at this point, thanks to the vision it gives. She can now activate ult to get the speed, and use W to check any bushes, making sure it's safe to enter, and then get wards down. This is actually faster and safer than any other support can do. Bard comes to mind with his chimes and his portal, but Quinn can spot enemies in bushes earlier than Bard, and doesn't have to rely on collecting chimes for the movement speed. The later the game goes, the more important this vision becomes, and the more likely picks are since the damage keeps increasing. But Quinn will never get caught thanks to this W. However, since he is a tank, Flanko sometimes does choose to get caught on purpose. Since he now has an item, he can bait enemies into bad fights, since he's so tanky. LOCKET keeps him alive and forces the enemies to overextend. In teamfights, Quinn is completely different. Her goal is not to assassinate anyone or even to stay in the backline. Tank Quinn wants to go for an engage onto a single target, slowing them and setting up a kill for her teammates. In many situations this is really difficult, because their team will be right next to them, so Flanko can instead use his kit just to peel. If an enemy goes in, he can use E to push them back and slow them, denying access to his backline. He can even interrupt dashes or blast cones. The blind on his Q is a lifesaver for teammates and so annoying to play against. Also now shielding his team with LOCKET and kiting the enemy. If enemies engage onto you, just like any tank support, they'll be wasting damage, since they're likely prioritizing the wrong target. It is incredibly hard to see a Quinn in the middle of a fight who's stunned and not try and focus her. It's just not how enemies would naturally play. Quinn can bait a ton of damage, and meanwhile her team can win the fight. LOCKET is incredibly bad if you use it incorrectly, but very good at stopping one champion from killing another. This is because most players play their champion by feeling, knowing their rough damage and who they can kill. So Quinn tries to disrupt this feeling with a surprising shield they won't even know the source of. If you disrupt this natural flow, it's the easiest way to bait people into bad situations. Flanko's game plan for fights is to always be in bird form. The movement speed is great for kiting and moving in and out to bait enemies. Also it does AoE damage every time he swaps. So he goes in bird form to get an engage or peel, gets a kill, then channels ult again to get back in bird form, chasing to get another kill, channels it again to get back in bird form, and keeps chasing over and over again just like that. Outside of fights, Quinn's main strength is using her ult to create 2v1 situations in a side lane. Flanko gets his team into a 1-3-1 with him in mid lane, then uses ult to speed over to a teammate in a side lane and catch an enemy for a pick. It's just like having a Twisted Fate or a Shen ult. You can immediately take advantage of anyone who walks up too far to get a kill, and then your team can use that to push in and get objectives. Almost every game, Flanko gets flamed in Champ Select, including people actively trying to lose the game for him, trolling him. But once they check his profile to see his high win rate and lots of experience playing playing it. They relax and play the game, even apologising after they win. On his account, he has hundreds of games played of Quinn Support. If you're starting off with this in ranked, you will be flamed, and you may actually deserve it. So make sure you have lots of experience in non-ranked games first. This pick is a bit too weird to first time. Every game, Flanko bans Nami. Poke supports are the counter to this strategy, and she is by far the best at the moment. For his build, since he takes Aftershock, all of his items are designed around it. He starts the AD support item, Spectral Sickle, every game, so that early on in lane he has enough AD to take fights. He always goes Locket, first item, with a choice of boots. His boots are always defensive, buying Mercury Treads against CC, and always comboing that with Deadman's Plate for mixed resistances. Deadman's is great on Quinn thanks to the bonus movement speed, letting him join fights even faster. If he buys Plated Steel Caps, he instead grabs Abyssal Mask. Abyssal Mask's passive is perfect. When enemies are slowed or stunned, they'll take 15% more damage from your teammates, which works really well with Quinn's E. So you can engage with E, and then the enemy will take more damage while you walk away. Lastly, he buys Vigilant Wardstone to ensure he has extra control wards, again for maximum utility. His special room page is all tankiness in his primaries, and then secondaries he takes Zombie Ward, as he must play Vision Control to help his team. He's not a Janna who can just sit back and be useful, or a Nautilus who can frontline tank forever. Zombie Ward gives Quinn another use in the game, so he can be as helpful as possible. Flanko the person, in real life, is actually now heading off to work at sea. He's just completed his university course in Maritime Transport and Nautical Science, so he won't be able to play League for at least the next 6 months. Let's hope he has time to watch this video before he goes, and please wish him safe travel in the comments. Thanks again to Surfshark for sponsoring this video, link in the description.